Welcome to Blind Spots, a podcast where we're helping you fill the gap between what you want to do with your money and what you actually do. We are professional investors, writers, and financial planners helping you navigate the complexities of finance to optimize what you can control and cut out the rest. Join your host, Nick Shermans and Aaron Varghese, as we discuss the questions and nuances surrounding everyday money management. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Blind Spots. We have a special guest on the podcast today that is going to become a permanent guest at least once a month here on Blind Spots. So if you're watching on YouTube, you might see a new face. If you are listening to the podcast as traditionally listened to, you will hear a new voice. So today we are joined by Tim Metz. He is our brand new advisor here at Pure Portfolios, and we are excited to introduce him to you. So Tim, welcome to the podcast.
Super excited.
So let's start off with just a quick introduction. Tell us a little bit about your background, what you like to do outside of work, and kind of what got you to this point in your life here today. How did you get onto a podcast?
That's a great question. Well, let's start from the beginning. I'm originally from Hong Kong. I was born and raised there. My dad's originally from Seattle, so he went over to Hong Kong about 40 years ago and has never left. But yeah, born and raised in Hong Kong and then came out to the States for college. I went to college in Santa Barbara, California, the gorgeous sun that we're missing out here now. But yeah, I got my degree out there and then worked at a wealth management firm for 2 years and then stayed with that firm, but helped them transition into a new role in Reno, Nevada, and I was there for another 2 years at a trust company wealth management firm. And I moved up to Oregon in October. My wife is originally from here, so it's a little bit of a coming home for her. And started with Pure Portfolios in October, and I've been absolutely loving it so far. So that's how I ended up on a podcast. Not what I thought I'd be doing, but it's all fun.
I can't believe it's been like 3 months already. Time is flying by. So we're super excited to have you on board on the team here. How has Oregon been for you so far? Because we've been hit by this Arctic blast in your first couple of months living here. This is not normal.
Yeah, I had my first ice storm. Experienced that yesterday, trying to get out to the car and almost eating it on the sidewalk. But no, Oregon's been great so far. I've missed the urban environment. Growing up in Hong Kong, it was a lot of walking, food, drinks, urban environment. And so it's been a good transition to come back to a place where it's actually walkable. There's tons of food, tons of restaurants, and obviously the natural beauty of the Pacific Northwest is just unbeatable. So going on different hikes and exploring the coast, going to Central Oregon and Bend, and it's been a great time in the last 3 months, and a lot more to come.
I think that's what's so beautiful about Portland, and I'm not originally from here either, is that being in Portland, you're an hour away from the coast. You go to the quote-unquote beach, which is very different from the beach that I grew up at. I have never worn a sweatshirt to the beach before I moved to Oregon. You can go an hour to the mountain, you can go skiing, you can go hiking, camping, and then you can go an hour the other direction, and you're kind of in like no man's land. It's amazing. So excited to see how your journey unfolds.
Yeah, I'm sure we had a similar experience with tropical beaches, Florida versus Hong Kong, probably pretty similar there. I remember the first time touching the Pacific Ocean was when I was probably 5 or 6, and I had no concept of a cold ocean.
The very first time I went to the coast in Oregon, and I was like, this is not the coast that I expected. So it's a fun experience being in a new place. So if you've listened to Blind Spots before, Toby Weber and Nick Shermans have their own segment that they call Happy Half Hour with Toby Weber. We're joining with a new segment, and we're calling it Simple Money. We're young, we're fun in the wealth management space, and we are bringing things kind of back to the basics. So in today's episode, we are starting with more of a foundational financial topic. And it's kind of topical because it's 2024. It's the new year. We're still in January. A lot of people are still high on their New Year's resolution. So we're going to be talking a little bit about goal setting, but this can be applicable throughout the entire year. Anytime you need a reset, anytime you have a big life change, reassessing your goals, setting new goals is always a good time to do that. So we're talking about setting goals and, more importantly, financial goals. Let's just briefly discuss the importance of setting financial goals, whether it's the new year or not. So, what's the purpose of setting goals? Of course, it's to provide some direction and some purpose in life and whatever your goals may be. Now, there's this kind of cheeky financial planning saying that if you fail to plan, you plan to fail. So, without any direction, you're really not going to make any movement kind of towards your North Star. So everyone has goals, but as we've talked about in many other blind spots episodes, it's really about your habits. We've talked about this example of when you have two teams in, I'm blanking on what, the football, two teams in the, if you have two teams in the Super Bowl, if you've got two teams in the Super Bowl, they both have the same goal of winning the Super Bowl, right? But it's all about the preparation and the habits of leading up to the Super Bowl that really are going to dictate what that outcome is going to be, right? Both teams want to win, but who has put in the work and the effort in order to achieve that? So it's great to have goals, but we're going to kind of break down what those habits and smaller steps are in order to achieve that. So setting financial goals is going to really help you prioritize how you spend, how you save, how you invest, and that is going to all be based on what is important to you. So we're kind of breaking this down into three parts. One, kind of how to start. It's the softer side of goal setting like we've been talking about. Second part is kind of the meat. It's the actual doing. It's what logistically you need to do day to day, month to month, year to year in order to get to whatever that goal is. And then third, we're going to wrap things up just with the things that you need to know specifically in 2024, like contribution limits, what you can do this year, and kind of those guidelines to set you up for success. So all of that to say, before you make plans for the future, you have to know where you have been in order to figure out kind of where you want to go. So Tim, I'm going to throw it over to you, and you can talk all about how you assess how you are currently doing in your financial health.
Yeah, absolutely. I think one of the essential steps and the beginning point of all this is doing a financial health checkup and kind of defining your financial vision of what you want in the future and moving forward. So I think one of the most essential things that people may or may not do, but it is the first step, is to just lay everything out there. And you're kind of checking the vitals and making your treatment plan if you're talking about a patient. So you got to lay it all out there. We're talking income, expenses, your savings, and then also your goals. Just look at averages, start from basics, like what do I typically spend, what I typically make, do I have a shortfall, am I saving money, am I not, and just kind of put it out there. And that's your base layer starting point. And then I think it is a lead with your values and lead with your goal and start there. So what am I wanting to do this year? What am I wanting to do in 3 years? What am I wanting to do in 5 years? What does my life want to be like then? And you got to start there, because really if you don't have a goal, you can't really plan to get there, like Aaron was talking about. One of the most important things I think I learned in class in college was when you make decisions, you can't go and judge them after you make them. So if you make a decision now about what I'm doing, I can't then take the outcome and be, oh, that was a good or bad decision. The decision you make right now is good or bad based on the information you have and what you do with that. So I think Nick talked about this in a podcast previously, but is the decision you're making right now taking you closer to the goal or farther away from the goal? And your decision should be based on that. And without that North Star, without that goal, you have really no context of how to make that decision. So that's step one, is to really lay it all out there and then define where you're trying to go.
I love what you said and kind of drawing the parallel between, it's kind of like it's a health checkup. It's kind of a nice way to visualize it. You go to the doctor to check up what's going on with your body. You can also do this financial checkup, lay it all out there. And I think honesty is one of the hardest things that people deal with in terms of finances. Like a lot of people don't want to go through this kind of process because they don't want to deal with the potential truth because it may be negative or they may need to fix things. But I love that you're starting out with that.
Yeah. I think that's 100%, one of the pitfalls too, is be honest with yourself. If you are spending more than you make, that's okay. You just got to know it. And you got to say, this is where I'm falling short, or this is where I'm not doing, it's not aligning with my goals, and be okay with it and that's the whole thing. You lay it out there, and then we can come up with a plan of how to move forward. Yeah, and sometimes it's hard to define what the goals are. Sometimes it's hard to look at it, and that's where, talking to an advisor or somebody that does this day in and day out can help, and can help you define where you want to go and how to get there. So another part of the financial plan and you're checking up on your financial health and all that is understanding what goes into it. So we talked about income, expenses, savings, and a big part of that is understanding your debt and your credit and what goes into it. So just as a high level overview for your credit, a credit score is a key driver of what you're going to be able to leverage in terms of debt and what kind of credit and credit line you'll be able to get. A credit score really is important, and understanding the factors that go into it are also important. So basically it breaks it down to a few things, but payment history, amount that you owe on your credit, the length of your credit history, and any kind of new credit, and then the credit mix. What kind of debt are you having? So different credit cards, mortgage, car loan, student loans all play into that. So really understanding what you have in terms of debt and what kind of credit you have really goes a long way with your financial health as well. So that's something just to be mindful of when you do your financial health checkup.
I'll take that a step further because I'm really passionate about this topic. And this is a whole other podcast topic about, finances and relationships. But not only is it important to know your personal credit score and history with finance, it's also super important to know what your spouse or your partner's same history and credit score and all of that is as well. Because if you are combining finances or you're combining your lifestyle and goals and working towards those things together, it's really hard to do that together if you don't know what the other person has going on. So if you're doing this alone, wonderful. If you're doing this with a spouse or you have a partner, do it together. Make it a fun activity. Finances can be a big point of contention in relationships. It's one of the leading causes of divorce in the United States. But this is all really important information to have with your spouse. So when you're doing this kind of financial checkup, make sure you include everyone in the household. I can go on and on about that topic, but I won't today.
Yeah, I feel like that's another good podcast idea right there.
Yeah, no, it totally is. Okay. So this next topic is something that I am also very passionate about, and it is reflecting on where you have been. So I'm a big New Year's, not resolutions person, but I love kind of turning the page of the new calendar, reflecting on what the last year has kind of brought me, what I have accomplished, what I haven't accomplished. I'm a big reflections person. I always like to reassess things to just, again, see where I've been and how I can improve going forward. So of course this applies in your financial life. So reviewing your financial achievements and any challenges that you had in the previous year is really important to understand where you want to go next. But I also think it's really easy to get caught up in this kind of how to be better mindset all the time. And if you're always in that mindset, it's going to feel like you're kind of spinning on a hamster wheel. The finish line is never there. So I also think it's important when you're doing this reflecting to stop and really celebrate even the smallest achievements. Maybe last year, for example, you wanted to max out your 401k and that didn't happen, but maybe you got up to 50% of the total max for the year. That's a big achievement. Most people aren't doing that, to be quite frank. A lot of people don't even contribute to their 401k at all. So I think it's really important that even if you don't hit all of your big lofty goals it's still important to stop, smell the roses, and celebrate how far you have come. Along with that, I'm going to keep this next part brief, but we're going to talk a little bit about budgeting. And I know budgeting is kind of this cringy word that has a really negative connotation. A lot of people avoid it because it has such a negative feeling to it. But I'm here to tell you, as a financial advisor, that budgeting doesn't have to be scary. And I think advisors are always viewed as, these people that are going to pound the table and say, only eat beans and rice. You have to restrict all of the things that you're doing. Don't go out for your $5 coffee in the morning. Push off the things that you want to do until you've achieved the things that you want to do earlier in life. But at Pure Portfolios, we handle this a little bit differently. We are big advocates for balance, enjoying the fruits of your labor as you go, because we know that tomorrow isn't promised. So budgeting doesn't have to be scary. It's really going to reflect what your current values are and the things that you want to accomplish. And those things like maybe travel or gifting or helping a loved one, maybe that's baked into your budget. So you don't have to feel guilty about spending on those extra things because you've already planned for it. So in last week's blog post, we talked all about how to create a realistic budget. So I'm not going to belabor on the budget topic. Go ahead and read that blog post. I think it's a really nice guide through budgeting.
Yeah, and just to go into that a little bit, not only does it not have to be a scary thing, budgeting, it can be very rewarding in terms of tying in the values that you have and the lifestyle you want to have and really using the money that you have worked for and putting it to work for your lifestyle and for things that you do want to do.
Yeah, I think I'm not a crazy budget lady. I don't itemize every single expense, but it is really empowering to, I don't want to keep using the word goals, but you set your goals, you set your parameters, but meeting that or exceeding what you wanted to do, it kind of gives you like a little high. Like there's definitely a dopamine rush when you start really making progress on things. So try it out. It doesn't have to be scary and weird, but budgeting can be fun. And I probably sound like a cuckoo bird right now saying that, and that's okay with me. So I'll let you take over emergency funds because this is not a hot button topic, but a lot of people have different opinions on how big emergency funds should be, where they should be, how much they should be. So tell us what you think, Tim.
Yeah, absolutely. It's not a fun topic, but it's something that you have to have. So yeah, I think where we stand on this is it's important to have an emergency fund for everyone, no matter, if you have a lot, little, it's important to have some sort of emergency fund out there just for peace of mind and also a financial safety net in case something horrible happens. Typically around the 3 to 6 months of expected expenses is where we want to land on for that number. So, again, that could sound really intimidating, but if you start small and you contribute a little bit every month, you'll get there sooner than you think. And it's kind of that snowball effect of, you start a little bit and then sooner or later you look at it and like, oh, we're here with this emergency fund. And, that's just something that is, we can look over it and ignore it, but it's something that really is important. If that life-changing event happens or even some unexpected expenses just come up and you haven't budgeted for it or you don't have that margin, then this is a great tool to help you get through that period with the minimal amount of stress.
Where do you think people should keep an emergency fund?
Great question. I would say in an accessible vehicle. So be that in your bank account, a separate bank account where you're not dipping into for your day-to-day expenses and it's just kind of separate out there. Or if you wanted to put it in, a money market fund where it's making a little bit of interest, but it's also a liquid vehicle. All those kinds of things are places I would put them in. Do you have any thoughts on that one?
Yeah. One of the silver linings to interest rates going up, as much negative media there has been around higher interest rates, one of the silver linings to that is that yields are also up as well. So for net savers, this is a really wonderful thing. You can easily clip right now, it's January of 2024, 3, 4, 5% in a high yield savings account or a money market fund, like Tim said. Those are very liquid places to keep your money. So that means you can get that cash fast. It's also going to be very safe. So we're not dumping this into the S&P 500 and maybe it's up, maybe it's down. And when you need it, if it's down, you might be in trouble. So we want to keep the emergency fund in a place that isn't going to fluctuate a lot. So take advantage of the higher yields that are available right now. The other piece of advice that I always have is I love out of sight, out of mind for the emergency fund, especially if you're the kind of person that if you see the money, you want to spend it. The emergency fund is not that. It's in case of an emergency, right? So I personally love the idea of keeping it in a separate place outside of where you bank so that you're not seeing it on a daily, weekly, monthly basis when you're paying your bills. So if that's you, that's just one of those little nuggets of advice that helped me when I was much younger and reckless. All right, so let's get into the fun stuff of 2024 and some of the actual logistics of what you're going to be doing this year. So we'll go through a few. These are all available online, and you can always reach out to your financial advisor if that's us or someone else. Google is also a really wonderful resource for these things if you're curious. But after you've gone through your budget, you've set all of your goals, and you know what you can allocate for the future, you're going to set what those achievable savings targets are. So now we're talking about savings and investing. So numbers are really difficult to hear over a podcast. So again, refer back to Google, and we'll have some of these in the description below, but I'm just going to run through these really quickly. So if you are contributing to a 401k, you can contribute in 2024 $23,000 this year. If you are over 50, there is an additional catch-up contribution. So maybe if you're a little bit behind on your savings, you can contribute that little extra. That amount for you, if you're over 50, is $30,500. So I like breaking these down into bite-sized chunks. We're in January, so it's coming out of your paycheck each every 2 weeks, every week, every month. You can break it down to $1,916 a month if you're under 50, or if you're maxing it out and you're over 50, it's a little over $2,500 a month. So that may sound like a lot to you. That may sound like a little, but if you are trying to max out your 401k, that's what it looks like. We'll go a little quicker through these. So if you want to contribute to a Roth IRA or a traditional, between the two of them, you can contribute $7,000 for the year. If you're over 50, it's $8,000. So what that translates to is about $583 a month, or $666 and some change if you are over 50. I love HSAs because they are triple tax advantaged. So if you have a high deductible health insurance plan or premium, an HSA is a wonderful vehicle to take advantage of. So for a single plan, you can contribute a little over $4,000 this year. If you're contributing for a family, it's $8,300. So that money goes in pre-tax. As the money grows and as it's invested over time, there's no capital gains tax on the growth. And then when you take out that money for a qualified expense, it's tax-free as well. So there's really wonderful tax advantages to that type of account. So if you're not taking advantage of it, highly recommend it. And the other thing that I'll say about HSAs, Tim, I don't know if you've noticed this, but the two websites I've seen it on, and I'm sure there's more, is Amazon and Sephora. A lot of people think that the HSA money is really restricted to the type of expenses that you can spend it on. So this doesn't just mean that it's a bill from your doctor or your dentist. There's a myriad of things that you can really spend this money on. So the reason I mentioned those tabs on those websites is because these websites have an area that you can go to where those products can be a qualified expense from an HSA. So there's probably more than what you think. I mean, things like a toothbrush or toothpaste.
Yeah, no, on Amazon there's a ton. I mean, we even saw, those muscle massager gun things that you use.
No way.
And even those are HSA, eligible. So there's a lot out there.
Yeah, a lot available. So anyways, take advantage if you can. Let's go into debt. Now that we've talked about saving and investing, maybe that's not your jam. Maybe we're in debt payoff mode. So let's talk a little bit about that approach.
Debt is something that most Americans deal with in some form, be it an auto loan, student loans, credit cards, a mortgage, pretty much every American has some sort of debt. So it's something that we should talk about and come up with a strategy for. When we talk about debt, there's a lot from other podcasts and other people that have very strong opinions of pay it all off, never have any debt, or all the way to the other side of, get as much debt as you can, leverage it, and, make yourself a millionaire off of debt. And there's a lot to unpack here, and we won't go into all of it, but here's some kind of basic tenets that you can take for a debt strategy. Essentially it comes down to tackle the debt that is going to cost you the most. And I think that's step one, is to look at all the debt that you have and kind of determine what that most expensive piece is and then tackle that first, because that's going to cost you in the long run a lot of money. Average credit card interest rates as of August were about 22.5%. So that adds up really quickly. So on a $20,000 balance, you're paying about $4,500 just on the interest. So that stacks up really quick. So it's really important to look at your debt mix and figure out what you want to take on first, and be the most efficient about it. The other piece of this is, obviously, we talked about earlier, your income and how much you're saving. And it's really a cash flow problem of this much is coming in, I have to spend this much, and then there's also this debt piece out here. So maybe you can spend 500 less on something and take that money and throw it into the debt. And if you do have that kind of debt, we want to encourage you to look at where you're spending and really prioritize debt, because that can really add up and cause a lot of problems in the future if it's not taken care of. So when looking at your debt, what I would do is write a list of all the debts you have, the interest rates, and look at the monthly payments. So that's typically available on all your statements that you get from whether it's a credit card or a student loan. You'll get to see that. And you kind of can put together a picture of what's my monthly cost of this debt and what can I take on first, and kind of start chipping away at it. And sooner or later, like we've talked about, the snowball effect kicks in, and little by little it becomes a lot more digestible of a number. And you can talk to a professional too, talk to financial advisors, whether it's us or somebody else. We can always help you look at it, and there's other options out there. Debt consolidation is a tool that some people use to be able to put all their different buckets into one and just start paying off the one piece. In my personal experience, it's actually saved us a lot of money. My wife has some student loans, and it was just a matter of her sitting down with the loan officer at the school and saying, here are all my different student loans. How should I tackle this? And they were able to show her the different interest rates on the different loans that were all bundled together and break it out. So it'd be like, okay, let's attack this one with a 6% interest rate. Don't pay off your 3% one yet. And that's, ended up saving us thousands of dollars in the long run. So that's a good example of, in practice, how it's worked out for us.
That's amazing that they had that resource available. I don't know that every school has that, but I do know that there are a lot of local type resources, like a debt consultant kind of. They're usually kind of volunteer positions with different organizations, but if debt is something that you're really struggling with, I think it's worthwhile doing your research. It doesn't have to be something that buries you forever. I'm a big Reddit lurker on the personal finance pages, and it kills me every time I see, these stories of, I'm 19 years old, I have $5,000 in debt, I just started my first job, like, am I financially ruined for life? And I just want to jump through the screen and help this person, because the answer is no. Anyone can overcome this, but you have to have a plan in order to do it. So I love what you said about doing what's kind of called the avalanche method, where you tackle those higher interest rates first, and then as those are paid off, you keep rolling that payment into the next one until it's all done. So love that strategy and approach. Okay. I think I teased earlier that we would talk about gifting and charitable contributions, and maybe did not, but that's what we're going to talk about now. We believe that there is a role of generosity that can be incorporated into your personal financial plan. And there's a lot of ways that you can integrate that, whether it's early in your career when you're still in the wealth building mode, or whether you have built your wealth, maybe you're stepping into retirement, or you are already retired. There's a lot of different ways that you can incorporate this. So we'll talk about two. One is just through gifting. So I think gifting gets really confused, especially on the tax side. So just really quickly, you can give to anybody as much money as you want every single year. There is something called the gift exclusion, however, and a lot of people get this mixed up with, there's $18,000 of a gift exclusion for 2024, and some people think that's all I can give. Well, the IRS doesn't say you can't give more than that. But if you do, know that it has to be reported when you file your taxes. Now, that doesn't mean that you have to pay taxes on a gift that's over $18,000 in 2024, but it does go to what's called your lifetime exclusion. If I haven't lost you yet, there is, throughout your lifetime, right now it's about 13 million that you can give over and above that exclusion each year that you don't have to pay taxes on. Once you give over 13 million, that's when you have to potentially start paying taxes on it. Now, one important thing that we are going to be continuously monitoring is the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act. This is a really important piece in financial planning right now that we're all kind of keeping an eye on, but that is set to expire December 31st of 2025. Meaning right now, if that is not renewed, starting in 2026, that lifetime exclusion that right now is about 13 million is going to revert back to a much lower dollar amount, somewhere in the range of 5 to 6 million. So if you have amassed a large sum of wealth and you want to gift, there might be some changes coming for you. All of that to say, you can gift as much as you want to anybody, but know that in 2024, it's $18,000 per person. If you have a spouse, you can each do $18,000 for somebody. So if me and my husband were feeling really generous, we could gift Tim $36,000 this year and not have to report it anywhere. It would just be a really nice gift, and Tim would get $36,000. We would not have $36,000 anymore, and that would be the end of it.
You know where to find me.
Yeah. Always check with your CPA just to make sure that you're doing things within the right limits, but that's on gifting. So the last thing I'll say on this is that if charitable giving is your thing and you happen to be over 70 and a half and you're listening to this podcast, you can do what's called a qualified charitable distribution. This comes out of a traditional IRA, so money that you haven't paid taxes on yet, and you can gift up to $100,000 to a qualified charity without paying any taxes on it. So if gifting or charitable contributions is something that you are interested in, talk with your advisor, talk with your CPA to ensure that you are doing it in the most tax efficient way possible, but know that that can be incorporated into your financial plan, no matter what stage of life you're in. We've talked a lot about goals, all the things that you can do in order to achieve or meet your goals. Let's talk about celebrating some of those milestones.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's like you said earlier, actually, it's so important to acknowledge the achievements that you make throughout the year, making progress toward those goals, and just looking back and checking in to make sure you've made the progress, and then celebrating the progress you have made. Like we talked about earlier, money is a tool to create the lifestyle you want, and it's not just the end-all be-all of adding numbers and getting a bigger number at the end of the day. It's about using that to do things that make your life worth living. Life is too short not to celebrate, so you might as well go use it for some fun, right? But yeah,
Absolutely.
I think acknowledging our achievements throughout the year, it provides not only a reminder for the effort and discipline you're able to put towards these goals, and also the sacrifices that you made to get there. And yeah, celebrating these creates a positive behavior pattern and helps you build momentum moving forward. So I think tying it all back to the beginning of it's a new year, and we want to have these new lofty goals and things like that, but without celebrating things and without reinforcing good behavior, it's hard to be able to take that momentum through the rest of the year. So as you go through 2024, make sure to take a break and take a step back, look at everything you've done, and make sure to celebrate.
I love that. That is the perfect way to end an episode, all about setting goals and achieving them is just by celebrating. So we encourage you to start the new year with clear financial goals, understand where you want to be and the steps that you're going to take in order to get there. And thank you, Tim, for being on your very first episode of Blind Spots. We are excited for all of our future episodes. And I think just through talking through this episode, we've probably come up with like 3 or 4 other episodes that we'll do in the future.
Yeah, this was fun. Can't wait for the $36,000 coming my way.
Yeah, that's not promised. So thanks for listening to this episode of Blind Spots. We will see you in the next one.